Hello everybody, it's Thursday, September 13th. This is another edition of Tracking the Tropics. Meteorologist Jim Dickey here in the ABC7 Hurricane Center. Of course, landfall expected later on today, if not early Friday morning with Florence in the Carolinas. And only one of four named storms out there in the Atlantic right now. This is the first time since 2008 that we've had four storms all at the same time in the Atlantic Basin. And it's not out of the question we could have a fifth later on today as well, as we're still watching that little swirl in the Gulf of Mexico, Invest 95L. All right, so how this video is going to work. I'm going to first start with Florence, then I'm going to get to Isaac. So if you just are looking for some info on Isaac here, go about halfway through the video. That's when I'll be moving on to that storm. But let's begin with Florence. This is the 8 a.m. advisory, as I'm recording this, just came out. Wind still holding at 110. The motion has slowed. That's what we've been expecting. So if this is the first thing you're seeing on Florence today, the winds have come down. It's not looking nearly as organized. It actually looks sort of like the hurricane symbol. But southerly wind shear really did a number on that inner core of Florence. It was in the middle of an eye wall replacement cycle. That shear came in. It wasn't able to complete it. So it's unlikely it gets back to Category 3 or higher strength, showing some signs perhaps it's trying to get its act back together. On IR satellite now, we're seeing a nice blow-up of thunderstorm activity on the storm's southern side. And actually, it's getting close enough that we can see the rainfall on radar. We can see the center of Florence, actually. It's about 180 miles off to the south and east of Wilmington. And again, it's starting to slow. That forward motion slowing as it's starting to feel the sort of shield of high pressure that's set up in the middle of the United States that is going to keep it from moving out all that quickly. In fact, let's take a look at what one of our in-house forecast models is doing with Florence, and this model tends to be great with predicting hurricane tracks. In fact, it absolutely nailed Irma last year coming into Southwest Florida. So here we go. This is by 6:50 this evening, the eastern portion of North Carolina getting in to that northwestern eye wall of Florence, but the center still offshore. There we are by about 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. Now we have the storm inland, but this is when the worst conditions are arriving for the eastern coast of North Carolina. This is when they get the back edge of the eye wall. The winds will start to pick up once again, and they will be onshore. So this is when the storm surge comes into play. We advance this forward. We still have onshore winds. This is by Friday evening, almost 9 o'clock, and this has not moved all that much from its initial landfall, which will likely be near Wilmington, and it continues to slowly crawl its way to the west. By Saturday afternoon, look at that blow-up of rain over East North Carolina. Rain continues to be a huge problem there, and then finally we get into Sunday and Monday. This is lifting out, but it'll still be a rain producer. There's still going to be an inland flooding threat. Spots in Virginia, North Carolina, even Kentucky and West Virginia, perhaps even into Pennsylvania once we get into the early part of the work week. But the biggest concern for flash flooding is going to be in eastern North Carolina, where that storm first comes onshore and there's about 24 to 48 hours of torrential rain. Bullseye there on our model. This is the same model I just showed you, but I'm totaling up the rainfall through Monday. Just about 30 inches, and that could very well be an underestimate. I think there'll be a range here, 20 to 40 inches. I think some spots could see even higher amounts than that. So that's going to cause flooding on its own. But something else to factor in, there's the storm surge to deal with. Again, you see that wind flow. We go into tonight and Friday morning. This is by 6 a.m. There's your onshore wind for the Outer Banks, North Carolina, down through the Crystal Coast. And as we go forward in time, and this continues to swirl its way westward, the onshore winds expand southward into Wilmington, all the way down towards the coast of South Carolina. So you have your storm surge. That means the water is being forced by the winds onshore. And in many spots, 9+ feet of storm surge is possible. That means 9 feet of water over the ground in these areas by the coast. We're also going to put down 30 inches of rain on that. Rain usually gets to the rivers and then goes out into the ocean, funnels out that way. When you have those onshore winds, how is all of that water supposed to drain out? And the answer is it's not going to. So at least through the weekend, all of that water going to be stuck and piled up on the coast of North Carolina, leading to in all likelihood a historic flooding event there. And also of note, the storm surge is going to last through multiple tidal cycles. each high tide and low tide, the water is going to come down a little bit and come back up a bit. So this is a long duration storm surge and freshwater flooding event. And just look at the overall threat tracker here with Florence to sort of wrap this up. The winds have come down, yes. It's not going to be a high impact wind event for many. There's still likely going to be 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts, I think, as this comes onshore on the coast of North Carolina. That's going to cause damage. It's going to be a huge hit to the power grid there. Many spots losing power for a week or more. But we're not going to see those potential Cat 4, Cat 5 winds, I don't think, with Florence. Flooding and surge, storm surge, the main concerns. With this, I think we have a historic flooding event unfolding as we go through the next 2 to 3 days. Storm surge, a big problem too, and I think this is a storm we will be talking about for a long time. This could be a storm of record, I think, for the Carolinas. All right, let's switch gears and talk about Isaac, which is a much weaker storm. No question there. Still holding this as a tropical storm as of that 8 a.m. advisory. It is moving quickly, 21 miles per hour off to the west. It is about to cross onto the islands. In fact, I have circled what I believe is the center of circulation with Isaac. It continues to be battered by wind shear, and that's taking the storms that are trying to form right over the center and pushing them away from the center. You sort of see that with that blow up, that bright white showing up. That's heavy thunderstorm activity, still away from the center. That is not a sign of a healthy or intensifying tropical system at this point in time. It is struggling to survive this wind shear right now. But as you look at the current wind shear, everything in red, high wind shear, which again is still battering Isaac at this point in time, it's going to move into a little pocket where the wind shear dies down a bit. But I do think, as you work through the rest of the weekend, we're going to start to see that outflow from Florence. It's a huge circulation in the atmosphere, and that outflow is going to impact Isaac, adding more wind shear to the picture. So a good many models show Isaac falling apart as it works westward over the next couple days. In fact, you can see that in the intensity plots. About half and half. Half these solutions show this going down below tropical depression. In fact, a good number of them actually drop it off the map entirely, opening up Isaac to just an open wave of low pressure. Now, there are a few that are still latching on to the idea that it holds together, and once it gets to the northwest Caribbean, then it could intensify a bit. And if it does survive, the general track it looks to be taking is off to the west and then northwest. So it's not entirely out of the question that something could survive here, even be it just a tropical wave, and make it to the Gulf of Mexico. And if it did, the conditions would be better there for perhaps some re-intensification. So there's still definitely some uncertainty, quite a bit of uncertainty, in the longer range solution with Isaac. It's definitely a storm that anyone living on the Gulf Coast needs to continue to check in on the forecast through the weekend into next week. Not something to worry about just yet, not a direct threat just yet, but again, something to keep tabs on. And as I bring you through the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center with Isaac, they are now calling this to break down to a tropical depression, if not an open wave, by early next week, south of Jamaica and Cuba. Again, one to watch, not one to get too concerned with just yet. And lastly, I do want to touch on Invest 95L. It's just a disorganized cluster of showers and thunderstorms right now, but there is a chance that before it works to the coast of Texas, it could develop that low-level center and be named a depression, if not a tropical storm. Regardless, it'll be a rainmaker, not much of a wind threat, but it could bring some localized flooding issues to portions of central and southern Texas through the weekend, so something we'll be watching there. If it were to take a name, it would be Kirk. It would be the 11th named storm of 2018, which, man, remember August? But it was so quiet for weeks on end, and now suddenly we have 4 named storms out there in the Atlantic. We should go back to August at this point in time. All right, so takeaways. Florence makes landfall tonight, if not early Friday morning, near Wilmington, North Carolina, likely as a Category 2, if not Category 1 storm. But the category, the wind intensity, not going to matter all that much. That wind field is just so large. Its rain-making potential so huge that flooding and storm surge are going to have massive impacts, especially in eastern North Carolina and parts of South Carolina as we work our way through the weekend. Isaac, meanwhile, is weak right now. There's a very good chance it could completely fall apart over the Caribbean Sea over the weekend, but I'm still going to be keeping a very close eye on it. And if you're watching this from the Gulf Coast, watching this from Southwest Florida, I want you to keep tabs on that forecast too. Nothing to worry about just yet, but something we'll be watching. I will likely be back with another update tomorrow as we watch Florence move its way into the Carolinas. Going to be a long couple days there in the Carolinas, unfortunately. Until next time, I'm meteorologist Jim Dickey. Have a good one.